Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus and I'm at Brian's Drive-In Theater, where today we will learn about Brian's favorite Christmas movies. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing well tonight, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to your talking about one of the movies that you shared because I recently saw it myself.
Oh, you're talking about Redland. Yeah, we'll talk about that. It's the most recent Christmas movie that I've seen, released well, just about a month ago, I think. Maybe not even that long. I saw the previews all fall long for the movie, and we will talk about it in a bit. But it's just a preview. I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it looked good on screen. Um, Now, some of the other movies that I like to watch during the holidays really vary. There are certain television shows that I watch. For example, we always watch Christmas with SCTV, Second City Television. When SCTV went to NBC in the early 1980s, for two of the seasons, they did Christmas episodes, and I think they're brilliantly done, and actually at times kind of poignant, heartwarming. I'd really say, as SCTV could every once in a while they could pull it off and make something funny, but something touching at the same time.
And I miss Count Floyd.
Well, he was from Pittsburgh, Joe Flaherty. Um, and when Count Floyd would talk about some of the movies, he would refer to areas around the Pittsburgh region, Pittsburgh Metro, I guess I should say. Because one of the movies he would hype on Count Floyd's, I can't remember, Monster Chiller Horror Theater, was called Blood-Sucking Monkeys from West Mifflin. West Mifflin is a borough just outside of Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh's amusement park, is located. And I go to Kennywood frequently. We are season pass holders, so we're in West Mifflin like several times a year. So, and I loved Joe Flaherty. I thought he did a really good horror host segment for SCTV, and I loved how sometimes they would work in um, scenes from the movies that he would be running, and they were never horror films.
Uh,
They had horror film like titles, but they were never horror films.
Ooh, that was scary.
Ooh, scary. Yeah. Who booked this picture? I loved it. And we lost him earlier this year. So sad because he was just riotously funny. His brother Paul also worked on SCTV, and he passed away several years ago, sadly. His brother was younger than he was. But I liked, SCTV was shot in Edmonton, Alberta, and Toronto. But I loved the Pittsburgh tie-in with Joe Flaherty and his brother Paul Flaherty. Anyway, though, we were here to talk about movies, maybe not so much TV shows. And the first movie I wanted to talk about, and I'll go in order of production, is a movie called Santa Claus. It was produced in 1959. It was shot in Mexico City, and in some circles, it's called Santa Claus versus the Devil. Um,
Hmm.
and it was picked up for distribution by an American producer named K. Gordon Murray. And K. Gordon Murray dubbed the film into English and released it to theaters about a year after it was produced. The movie came out in Mexico in 1959, and it came out in U.S. theaters, I think, around November of 1960. So that's a pretty quick turnaround on a foreign film to be, redubbed and retitled pretty fast. And K. Gordon Murray also narrates Santa Claus, which is it needs some narration here or there because it is completely bizarre. It's public domain, so you can see it anywhere, archive.org, YouTube. I think all of the streaming services are running it right now because it's public domain and it gives them free content. Um, but K. Gordon Murray did a lot of kiddie matinee films. He would pick them up for distribution in other countries, quickly dub them, and put them into theaters and make some decent money, off of them. And if you're a fan, one of my he uh, produced one of my favorite movies for U.S. audiences, and that's the Mexican film The Brainiac from 1962, which is genuinely creepy. I mean, I love Mexican horror films. I ran a Mexican vampire film, I think, just last week as the movie of the day. The Brainiac, though, I think is really creepy. It's a really fun movie. If you haven't seen it, it's got some pretty decent horror elements to it. Part of it's kind of ridiculous, and part of it's genuinely scary. It's a fun movie. It's right up my alley, anyway. Um, but Santa Claus in this movie has powers that maybe the traditional Santa Claus that we think of in the U.S. doesn't have. He doesn't live at the North Pole. Instead, he lives in the heavens somewhere. I mean, his palace is on a cloud, and he has this really complex surveillance equipment in his laboratory, so that he can figure out who's been naughty and who's been nice. And he's got a view screen so he can zoom in on certain good children and bad children. The production values in this are good, pretty high. To tell you the truth, it's shot in color, which I think is uh, black and white Christmas movies can be a lot of fun. I mean, Christmas in Connecticut's one of my favorite Christmas movies. But this one's for kids, and it really does need to be in color, I think. And it's shot in very vivid. Um, it, it looks like Technicolor. I can't remember whether it is or not, but it's very bright. Colors are very bright and very vivid. And the scenes are set so that they can milk every penny, out of that color stock that they bought for the film. And the staging of it is, like I said, very elaborate. The actors are good quality, hitting their marks. The story is pretty engaging, although one doesn't often think of Santa Claus. Well, unless you think about Krampus, one doesn't think about Santa Claus duking it out with Pitch so much. But Pitch tries to be Devil Santa Claus throughout the entire movie as he's on his way to deliver presents, and it's a cute, fun movie. A lot of people have given it a really low rating on IMDb and other places because A, it's public domain, and B, it ran on Mystery Science Theater 3000, I think around 1991 or so, somewhere in that time frame. It might have been a little later than that. And I don't think I think it's as a 4 or 5 year old child watching this in the theater, they would be totally fine with it because there's something going on screen all the time. It's not a boring movie by any means at all. Um, and I find it endlessly delightful. I always pull it out for Christmas. And like I said, even if I don't have my hard copy with me, and I do have, I think, a couple of actually physical copies of the movie, I can watch it anywhere because it's on, like I said, archive.org, YouTube, a lot of the other streaming services because it's public domain, and they're really good. They're good copies of it floating around. If you're interested, the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version is absolutely hilarious. They do a really good job with the movie. And just an interesting side note for K. Gordon Murray, who did I should say, put a lot of children's films in theaters in the 1960s. He kind of ended life on a sad note. He died young. He was only 57 when he passed away from a heart attack. And his assets had been seized by the IRS because he was accused of not paying his taxes. I don't know if he actually did or not. And he died suddenly, and he died before the whole case with the IRS was resolved. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of his movies are public domain. That's why a lot of them slipped over into it. But like I said, a lot of fun to watch the movie, and it's one I highly recommend. And I will either run that movie this coming week, either on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, probably Christmas Day. The other
Oh,
movie that I run for those 2 days is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. another public domain film, and it's another film that gets beaten up because a lot of people claim that it's horrible, and it's not a horrible movie. It's not ineptly made by any means, and the story is bizarre, but it is paced pretty well. And everybody in front of the screen and behind the camera is a pro. Even the children are professional actors. So it's not a terrible movie. And then, again, this one actually was shot in color, shot on Long Island, so pretty close, not too far from where you're from. In the summer of 1964, I think it was just a 2 week shoot. But there again, the sets are pretty lush and elaborate, shot in color. And some of that couldn't have been easy to do because there are certain scenes that take place on the North Pole, and there's snow and other sets that they needed for it. Some scenes take place on Mars. Other scenes are on a spaceship. Now the spaceship's a little weak, quite honestly, but the Mars episodes, I mean, the Mars pieces of it, segments, don't really look that bad. So I really don't think that this is one of the worst films of all times, as the MedVet
Oh,
might have said, might have stated. There are way worse Christmas movies. Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny is one of them. I was going to talk about that one tonight, but it is so painfully bad. It's Barry Mann. He was a producer like K. Gordon Murray, who tried to get inexpensive children's programming into theaters. Only his stuff was he was no K. Gordon Murray. His stuff was truly terrible. And if you ever want to watch a 90-minute movie that will make it seem like Greed, or some horribly long epic, watch Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny. It is just shockingly horrible. Entertaining in its badness, but after a while, you're thinking, "Oh my God, what's this thing going to end?"
I saw a movie about Santa Claus and werewolves not too long ago.
That sounds so fun. I do
Williams-
like I do like it when sci-fi and horror intersect, with Santa Claus. I think it's a lot of fun. You get that in the Santa Claus movie from 1959, but you also get that in Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
And you had a great T-shirt of Santa Claus versus
Well,
Mars.
actually, I didn't wear it tonight, but it's sweatshirt that I at this time of year you go to a lot of or I go to a lot of holiday parties and such. I went to one. I'm going to one on Saturday night. I've been to a couple already this season, and I've got some more to go to. And you want to wear something different every time, just in case you see somebody there that you saw at another party. And I needed to expand my Christmas wardrobe a little bit, so I got a really cool sweatshirt on Amazon that has a smaller version of the full size poster of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Highly recommend it. Just run a search for it in Amazon if you're interested, and you'll find it. And it's really cool. The graphic is enormous too. I mean, it starts here and it goes all the way down to the bottom. Nice big graphic, bright colors. Transfer looks good,
Yeah,
and it's one of my favorite movies. So why not? And it's not a great movie. It was a children's movie, and children's movies aren't supposed to be. They can't all be Disney, you know. And this one I think is entertaining. It's probably most notable in some circles for being Pia Zadora's film debut. And you remember Pia Zadora was a one-time actress in the early 1980s whose husband at the time tried to essentially buy her a film career. And she didn't seem too interested in it, and neither did the public, unfortunately. Uh, and her career never went very far. I think she had fun with it. She's in Hairspray. And really, I think she's awesome in Hairspray. She has a really cool. Um, it's a little more than a cameo. I mean, she has a few lines, but she was much maligned in the 1980s for being talentless, and I think she was just in some terrible vehicles, because when you do see her perform, she actually is not talentless at all, and she did have a lot of experience as an actor. including in Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Most of the cast members were either had been on Broadway or were currently working on Broadway. Some of them, like Vincent Beck, had extensive television resumes, and some of them had worked on soap operas and things like that. So these were all professional people who, knew how to memorize lines quickly, hit their marks, and do their jobs. And that's why it was a quick shoot, 2 weeks. And with all the different sets, that had to have been tough. They shot it for about 200 grand in 1964, which is kind of amazing because it is a color film, and color stock back then was expensive. It was a lot more expensive than black and white. And you had to have people who knew how to light for color. And those people were expensive too. Have you
Now
ever seen?
it's on our telephones.
Oh, yeah. um, Now, one movie that, and we'll delve into horror now. One movie that we watch, I think, practically every Christmas and have since the VHS days back in the 1980s. Is a movie that I first saw as a kid in the theater, and it's called Tales from the Crypt. It's
Hmm.
it's an Amicus production. A lot of people mistake it for Hammer because it uses Hammer and Amicus used a lot of same actors, and they both did a lot of horror films. So I can see why people would confuse the two. And they both turned out good quality productions. So it was of similar quality with a lot of the same actors. Tales from the Crypt stars the two biggest stars in it. There's Ralph Richardson's in it. Joan Collins. Joan Collins, I think, has the splashiest role in it. Peter Cushing has a really strong segment in it as well. And it's one of the it's a series of vignettes. It's not one linear plot. It's actually 5 different vignettes, all telling a story. And Christmas is sort of a running theme or a common thread through all 5 vignettes. Some more than others. Some just sort of pay passing and maybe glimpse at Christmas. Others, like Joan Collins' segment, which and hers is the first in the movie, is more Christmas related because it takes place on Christmas Eve. She's a married woman with a young child, and the child's all excited to see Santa Claus. In the meanwhile, Joan has just bashed her husband's head in. She's just murdered him. And she's trying to clean up the scene so she can make it look like he's fallen down the stairs. She can make it look like an accident. Meanwhile, this crazed lunatic has escaped from the nearby asylum and is dressed up like Santa Claus and is stalking her. He's around her house and he keeps looking in. So she can hear all of this on the radio, put two and two together. It's a quick vignette, probably no more than 12, 13 minutes long, but probably my favorite Christmas movie of all, to tell you the truth, because I saw it as a kid. I had never seen Santa Claus in any kind of a bad light, and it just kind of blew my mind. I loved it too. It kind of blew my mind.
Modern fans of Tales from the Crypt will note that the Crypt Keeper puppet comes after this movie. So you get a guy wearing like a Crypt Keeper robe, I guess. No puppet.
And I always assumed that was after the Ralph Richardson character in the movie. And Ralph Richardson is sort of the framing device. He lures these 5 people, not lures, but he leads these 5 people into some catacombs, and one by one explains to them, or they explain to him, why they're there. And they're all there because of their horrible misdeeds. So they're being punished. They're essentially in hell. And they're being punished for their deeds. But some of them have done some pretty wild things. And the one with Joan Collins, like I said, that I love it. So, I mean, I like her a lot anyway. And she did some horror movies in the 70s. And she's good in it. I mean, to tell you, I've never seen her turn in a bad performance, really. But she's really good in this. She's very convincing.
Yeah, that was a great
It,
anthology. And they did a few anthologies like that, Amicus,
it did.
where
They did
the
several. They for 2 or 3 years they did a bunch of
and they
them.
were anthologies too. And the punchline was pretty much much the same. You're in hell at the end of them.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, you back then, you well, and even to an extent now, for any bad guy, bad woman, in Joan Collins' case, um, people, it was almost expected, by audiences for people to pay for their crimes, even if you were secretly rooting for them. Another one that's public domain that I think a lot of people need to pay more attention to is Silent Night, Deadly Night. It was shot in New York in the spring of 1972, and it stars one of my favorite cult actresses, Mary Warrenoff. Um, and she often did kind of black comedy, tongue-in-cheek films. Eating Raoul is one of my favorite movies, and she's incredible in it. She's in Death Race 2000, and she has a great showy role in that. She does crazy, over-the-top characters extremely well. And in this one, if you're looking for that kind of performance out of her, you're not going to find it. She does a straight up dramatic performance, and she's very good at it. Very compelling as a dramatic actress. And she got her start in the Warhol factory in the 60s, but worked on her craft. And in the early 70s, other than having this role in Silent Night, Deadly Night, she's one of the stars of it, along with Patrick O'Neill. Her husband at the time was the director on this picture. From here, she went into a soap opera that was on NBC called Somerset. That was a spinoff of Another World. And she was on it for, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years, and despised it. It just wasn't her. I guess it wasn't fun for her. It wasn't her thing. Um, and soap opera work can be kind of grueling. You have to know, for one thing, whether it's a half an hour, and most soap operas used to be half an hour, then they went to an hour format, mostly in the late 70s for a lot of them, not all. But it's grueling work. You're working with sometimes a new script every day. It had to be shot quickly, and you couldn't flub your lines. So a lot of it is knowing your character and how your character would respond to a situation, and trying to keep that dialogue going, with the other person in your scene who's also doing the same thing. That had to have been kind of nerve-wracking. And it just wasn't for her. And thankfully, she did move on and didn't, wasn't in soap operas for the rest of her life. And she did some of my favorite movies like Rock and Roll High School. And she's brilliant as the principal in Rock and Roll High School. I love PJ Souls. Oh my God, in the Ramones, and Clint Howard. It's got a fantastic cast. Not a Christmas movie, unfortunately, but Silent Night, Deadly Night. As I said, she gives a straight up, solid, dramatic performance in it, and it's very good. John Carradine is in the movie too, but interestingly, although he's in a number of scenes, is made mute, so he doesn't have any lines. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that was his insistence or if they could get away with paying him less if he didn't have lines. I'm not really sure why he doesn't speak in it, but he doesn't. Patrick O'Neill is in it for a while. He's very good, high quality actor. And James Patterson is in it. He's well, I can't. If I tell you what he is in it, it's going to give too much of the plot away. But he's a major character in the film. And sadly, it was his last movie. He discovered he had cancer not too long after production on the film ran, and he died. I think before it was released. He was 40 years old too. He went from diagnosis to death. at that age, which is sad. But a really good movie to watch, and a lot of fun. Another one that I love watching is Black Christmas. I actually have a poster up right now in our foyer. So I try to. Oh, I've got a lot of movie posters and album covers on the walls in my home, and I try to switch things out for the holidays. And I don't have a full complement of the Christmas movie posters yet, but I'm working on it as I can find them. And right as you walk into my home, I've got a nice poster of Black Christmas, which is a terrific movie with a great cast. It was directed by Bob Clark, who directed Porky's, A Christmas Story, which is going to run 24 hours, I think, on TBS here coming up in the next few days. And this movie has, like I said, a terrific cast: Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, John Saxon, Andrea Martin from SCTV. And an actress, Margot Kidder, is also in it, and an actor, a Canadian actress that I've loved for years. Her name's Lynn Griffin. She's in Strange Brew with I almost said Bob and Doug McKenzie. I mean, those are the characters' names, but with Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis. It's a cheesy Canadian comedy based on their characters on Second City Television, SCTV, and it's one of my favorite movies. I love it. I first saw it on HBO, golly, probably about a year or so after it came out in 1983, and I watch that every year too. Although it's not really a Christmas movie, but oh well.
It's in the north in the snow, so
True. So, and it seems Christmassy. So, but Black Christmas is a great movie. A lot of it takes place in a sorority house on the campus of a large university, shot in Toronto. And Margot Kidder has a really good role as this sort of hateful alcoholic college student who's kind of a poor little rich girl in a sense. Really good in it. I mean, well, I never saw her in anything bad, quite honestly, but she's excellent in it. And Andrea Martin, has a pretty good role in it as well. Lynn Griffin is the first victim in the film, which is kind of interesting. Probably too much of a spoiler if anybody hasn't seen it. But I'm a big Bob Clark fan. He did the first movie he directed is public domain, and it's called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
great title.
It's a good movie too. It could have gone awry so easily because they had no money, for the budget. But as it ramps up, it gets creepier and creepier, and it's not everybody in it's a pro necessarily, but I think they get decent enough performances out of it. You can tell that it's low budget, but you can't tell that it's as low budget as it was. So there's that about children shouldn't play with dead things. And a Christmas Story, I think it's been run into the ground, unfortunately, but I think it's a really terrific, heartwarming movie with Darren McGavin and Melinda Dillon, who passed away, I think, just last year or so, and Peter Billingsley as Ralphie. I first saw that on HBO as well. But when A Christmas Story was released, it kind of bombed in the theaters. It didn't do very well. It was a small picture. It's shot in Cleveland and I think Toronto, although it's set in Indiana. And the house that Ralphie's house in the movie, I think sold not too long ago, as a matter of fact. And the house is actually in Cleveland still. But Black Christmas, well, and A Christmas Story, quite honestly, two of Bob Clark's Christmas movies, I think are really fun to watch. If you have a Christmas Story fatigue, lay off of it for a few years. I have not seen that movie actually for probably 3 or 4 years, and I might put it in this year because it really is well done. It's set in I would say pre-World War II era. probably around 1940, 1941. Old time radio comes into play in the film. I love the details that Bob Clark sprinkles throughout the sets in the house, in the house and in other places too. The hairstyles, the clothing, all look pretty period correct. And I don't know if you ever lived in a really old house or not, but a lot of those old houses that were built in, I'd say, early 1900s, like teens, 20s, would only have like one outlet per room, one electrical outlet. So if you look at the scenes, every one of the electrical outlets has this horrible bunched set of cords and all of these extensions plugged in, which is really, I think it's great detail, because I can remember people actually doing that in some of those old houses, which I know is horribly, which made a lot of those old houses burn down, quite honestly. Horribly unsafe, but true. Great detail in that movie, and in Black Christmas as well. I think the detail work in it is very, very good. Very fun movie. And it was Black Christmas was remade a few years ago. I haven't seen the remake. I don't really need to, because I like the original so well. I don't see how it was improved upon. And I'm sure it was not. Trying to think of what else. Oh, another one that I like, which stars Brandon Maggart, is called Christmas Eve.
Yes, I remember that.
It's a lot of fun, and it has a couple of titles. It's also known as You Better Watch Out. And Brandon Maggart stars as a toy factory worker. By the way, this is John Waters' favorite holiday film, so that should tell you something about this one. And I can see why he likes it, for a reason. It's done in all sincerity. Um, it's not really tongue in cheek so much. The actors in it all play it pretty straight until the very end, where it gets a little goofy, but it's still fun. I like it a lot. And Brandon Maggart is very dedicated to his job making toys in this factory, and nobody else around him really is. And he grows to resent how much he cares about Christmas and the children and the toys, and the people. Like I said, his coworkers just don't seem to care about what they're doing or their jobs, or what the significance of all of it really is. So he's very earnest in that respect, but he also starts killing people. So there is that. Um, and he also is a bit of a stalker. He's checking on the neighborhood kids to see who's been naughty and who's been nice.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy. But it's kind of hard to. He's essentially the protagonist in the movie, but he's deeply flawed and very creepy. He's got stalker tendencies. He's homicidal. um, he never really connects with any adult. Essentially, he seems to connect with children the best, and hopefully not in a rapey kind of way. But you don't see that in this movie at all. Like I said, it's played pretty straight, even though a lot of it really is absurd. But I think it works best that way. If it had been like tongue in cheek, if it had been kind of low camp, I don't think it would worked at all. And I think this one works pretty well. It has some good thriller elements, and it was shot for a pretty low price back in the day. It was shot in I think the winter of '79, early 1980, and for about $800,000 total. And it was shot around New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, kind of the tri-state area, depending on what they needed for the scenes. And it's well done. And Brandon Maggart is, as a footnote, he he's still with us. He's 91 years old. Um, but he but but a very good actor. Had some success in films and television, and his daughter is a singer named Fiona Apple.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah, very neat. And I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this one. Santa's Sleigh is so much fun.
Yes, that is a lot of fun.
And sleigh in this case is spelled Sally or
That's
Sly. Excuse me. Oh gosh, I've graded so many papers like S
that's
L A Y.
Goldberg is Santa Claus, right?
Pardon me.
That's Goldberg the wrestler is Santa Claus.
Sure is. And the first time I heard of this movie, and that movie's about 20 years old now. I think it came out in
Oh
2000.
wow. Yeah, you're right. When we first moved out to Pennsylvania, we became aware of that movie.
Mhm.
That's around years ago.
So in a sense, it's kind of becoming a classic. And it's a fun movie. It's well done. There are some interesting cameos in the film. Bill Goldberg, the wrestler, stars as a sort of Krampus Claus in a sense. He comes back every 100 years, or every is it 1,000? It's either
I
a I think it's a
remember
1,000 years. To
Santa the Barbarian.
pardon me.
I think of it as Santa the Barbarian.
Well, essentially, he's a homicidal Santa Claus, and he's back to punish the wicked. Essentially, Robert Culp has a great role in the film uh, as the person who fights back against evil Santa. And Dave Thomas from there's kind of a running Second City television
Yes,
thing.
I see that.
And Catherine O'Hara is the mom in Home Alone. They've almost all of them made Christmas movies at some point. Uh, Interestingly, I'm not a huge Home Alone fan. I know it's a Christmas film. I'm and it's okay. It's not a bad movie. I'm just not a real big fan of it.
Nor am I.
Oh, okay.
Although it came up in conversation twice today, two different conversations Home Alone came up.
I have a friend who, I mean, that's his favorite holiday movie, and I I think it's okay. Uh,
Mhm.
it's certainly big budget, well produced. It's just that I've seen it, and after you see that movie once, I think it kind of loses some of its luster because you know what's coming up. You know what's going to happen, and without that element of surprise, some of it doesn't really work. But that's for me. I know plenty of other people who could watch it on repeat the whole season. Um, but going back to Santa's Slay, terrific cast. Dave Thomas has a really cool, showy role. At the very beginning, James Caan and Fran Drescher have kind of cameo roles, and it's a really fun, kind of explosive way to start a movie too. It sucks you right in, as any first scene really should. And that makes for a really good horror film. Um, and this Goldberg Santa is bad Santa. And Goldberg, I think, is great in the movie too.
Yes, I think so too.
And pretty high body count too. I used to rate horror films by how many how many dead people there were, and there's a body count in this one. Well, let's go ahead now and talk about a movie that you and I have just recently seen, and it's
Yes.
the newest Christmas movie for the holiday season, and that's Red One. It stars Dwayne Johnson, um, who otherwise is known as The Rock. He does a lot of action movies, and initially when first saw the previews in this, I thought, oh, Christmas action movie. I mean, didn't we do this with Die Hard?
Mhm.
But I wanted to see it because I had seen the trailer for it like a dozen times, over the last couple of months, and some friends of mine also wanted to go see it. And I was going to go, and I started thumbing through Amazon Prime, and lo and behold, there it was for free, even though it's still in the theaters. So if you have Amazon Prime and you want to watch a brand new Christmas movie that actually I love,
Mm.
um, maybe for some of the wrong reasons, but I really did like the movie a lot. You log into your Prime account and you can watch Redland for free. It was financed by Amazon to the tune of about $250 million. It's
Wow.
very expensive movie. Um, and holiday films often don't have long shelf lives. You get them out into the theaters, and they're there for about 4 weeks. In that time you have all that money to make up. I'm not sure that's going to happen for Red Bull. Dwayne Johnson, I think, was 50 million of that 250 million total. Yeah, yeah, big money. Um, but that said, he, I think he does a really good job in the movie. Um, he's essentially employed as one of Santa's helpers, and he's kind of Santa's bodyguard.
And he's an ELF too.
Yeah, that's right. And he's sort of lost the Christmas spirit. He doesn't care for what he's doing anymore. He feels kind of lost, and he wants something more fulfilling. And Santa Claus is portrayed very excellently, but by the way, by J.K. Simmons, who's been in everything from insurance commercials to Oz, which I used to watch about 25 years ago. He's a really nasty character in Oz. Very very good actor.
Yeah, and he
And,
was J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man films for those who are into
and,
them.
and he's a really good Santa Claus too. I thought so anyway. And in the one of the things I really appreciated about the movie is that Dwayne Johnson is not in every scene. Like some actors seem to demand to be in every scene in a movie, and he is not in every scene. And I think it's a pretty good ensemble cast. The sets look great. Special effects are really good. Certainly worth seeing. I think it's worth paying $10 for it, for a movie ticket. But there again, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. You can get into your Prime account and cast it to your TV, or use your Prime app on your screen, and you can go ahead and watch this one. And I highly recommend it. I don't want to give too much away, uh, but Chris Evans has a pretty good role in it. Lucy Liu, I thought was awesome.
Mhm.
I kind of wished she had been in it more, because I liked her character. I liked the performance that she was giving. I thought she kind of grounded it uh, to a big degree. IMDb right now has it as a 6.5 out of 10. That's probably a fair assessment. Uh,
I
I,
would say so.
I might have gone a little higher than that, maybe a 7.5, because I really enjoyed it. Now, I walked into the movie. Well, I didn't walk into the movie. I logged into the movie essentially with fairly low expectations, and that can help. Um, it met my expectations, and even beyond that. It's very entertaining. It's a 2 hour movie. That's fairly long for a holiday film, but it didn't seem that long to me. It kept moving, and it was engaging as well. I do recommend checking that one out, and that's like the newest one that I've seen, and it just came out about a month ago.
Yeah, very recently. For me, I'm a lover of mythology, so it had lots of obscure Christmas mythology in the movie, and it made it believable isn't the right word, but it made it plausible. Um, where the technology that they had was superior to the technology that we had, and they were all connected in parts of stories together that we don't remember. And I enjoyed it too. It was fun.
It is a fun movie, and so many people have Prime, um, so it's not public domain, but this holiday season it kind of is. So if you've got Prime, so take a look at it. Like I said, I loved it. It's got a great cast. I've been following the director, Jake Kasdan, too. But I've tended to like what little bit of his output I've seen so far. And I loved this. Like I said, I thought it was very engaging. Bonnie Hunt is in this as Mrs. Claus. Nick Kroll, a comedian that I like a lot. I used to watch his show, How Simple. Has a not a bit part. I mean, he's got a supporting role, and he's pretty good at it as well. Very good cast. Very expensive production, especially for a horror film, or not a horror film. I'm sorry, especially for a holiday film. Like
Yes,
I
that's
said,
so very.
holiday films typically don't have very long legs, and whenever you see um, what am I trying to say? Whenever you see a production that costs that much, I'm always kind of intrigued, and it must have pretty good production values, and this one does. I mean, it looks good on screen, or at least I didn't see it on a big screen, but I saw it on the biggest screen in my house. Anyway,
And the special effects were good. They were relevant to the movie. They blended in well with the rest of the story, and again, they were believable within the context of the movie. And
yeah,
worked.
it did. It didn't seem. It sounds outlandish, but you get pulled into the movie really quickly,
Mhm.
and it doesn't seem outlandish after all. And you're right; it kind of fits the mythology really well. I thought it was a very good film.
And has a happy ending, and all the plot threads get tied together like a bow on a present. So,
And not all Christmas movies do have happy endings, so
right.
that is a very good point. Especially one that has some horror elements in it, with the Wicked Witch and Krampus. I thought the Krampus scenes were done really well, and the witches scenes look really good on screen too.
Yeah, there's so many great Christmas films. Gremlins had the Christmas film that was fun for a while. We've seen that too many times though, so we
Me
take
too.
it
Yeah,
from the
yeah. Some of these I've kind of had to pull back on. Like I said, I haven't seen A Christmas Story in a few years. Um, I haven't watched Christmas Vacation this year, which I also love.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in a few years either.
Yeah. I'm kind of conflicted about Chevy Chase. Obviously, I've never met him. I've read some really horrible things about him,
Yeah,
and but I do like Christmas Vacation a lot. It's a fun movie. Um, like I said, I think I had seen it too often, and I needed to pull back from it for a little while. But I think maybe I'm ready to watch it again. I love the original Christmas Vacation, and then the sequel European Vacation a lot. And Christmas Vacation, and I'm not big on sequels, but I thought Christmas Vacation was handled really well. It's about as good as the original film, maybe a little better. It certainly has a fantastic cast. And Mavis Staples sings the theme song. I mean, you can't go wrong.
No, when we do our next Christmas special, uh, those some of those things that we're not currently watching, we'll be interested in watching again.
Well, I hope so. In addition to, I haven't watched the Charlie Brown's Christmas special yet, so I want to fit that one in. And I did watch The Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I did manage to sneak Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol in fine.
Yes, you spoke about that recently on the pre-Christmas show. One of the movies that we've enjoyed, although we took a break from it this year and last year, is Bad Santa. We like the version that's Badder Santa.
Oh yeah, with oh
Slim Blade guy. I forget what his name is. Billy Bob Thornton.
Billy Bob Thornton. Yes, he was married to Angelina Jolie for,
Yes.
and he's an unusual guy, but I've loved him in everything I've seen.
Yeah, we enjoyed him a lot in Bad or Santa. That's a great movie.
He's good in Fargo, not the movie Fargo, but he was good in the series too.
Mm.
I can't remember it was an early season. Season one, season two. I guess season one. Well, it's either one or two. I can't remember which one it was. But I loved him in it. I thought he was great, and like I said, I've liked him in everything I've seen him in.
And for a while it was A Nightmare Before Christmas when that first came out, but that too we've seen it way too many times. So
Yeah, you know what? I don't need to see that again for a long time. It's okay. It's okay. Um, I wasn't crazy about it ever, to tell you the truth, and it's one I just don't. I need some more distance from it, quite honestly. Um, no, that's
our entire movies lists are based on like Halloween meets Christmas, which is what that was about.
true. No, there are traditional Christmas movies that I love seeing. I love Miracle on 34th Street, but
Uh,
the original with Maureen O'Hara, Natalie Wood, John Payne, and Edmund Gwenn. It is so heartwarming and touching. And little Natalie Wood, I mean, she's just a child in it, but she really tugs at your heartstrings, and does a great job in the film. And I've always been a John Payne fan. I mean, he did film noir, westerns. Um, he, he's just really engaging actor. Kind of a hard drinking guy, and you can see it, in some of his performances. Works really well with film noir. Really, really strong actor. Never really made it above the B's, but was a strong actor and box office draw. I mean, he could headline a movie and did, and many of them. And Maureen O'Hara. I mean, gosh, how many films did she make? Beautiful and very charismatic on screen, but gorgeous with her red hair too. Just a beautiful woman.
I want to thank you for a tour down pleasant memories, long forgotten avenues, and recent places as well. And we've done a lot of Christmas shows together, a lot of holiday shows over the years.
Yes, we have. I love holiday films. This time, and there's so much to watch now too. So many different, and we got a new one this year with Red One, and a good. I think a good holiday movie too.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's definitely going to be on our list for a few years. So we need to give it a break, like everything else. How can people find you and the drive-in theater?
Well, you can find Brian's Drive-In Theater on the web at www.briansdriveintheater.com. If you want to interact with me on social media, I'm just down to Facebook right now. That may change in the distant future. But if you're on Facebook, or, all you have to do is to run a search for Brian's Drive-In Theater, and the page will pop up.
Thank you very much. I tried Blue Sky recently. I haven't figured it out yet.
I haven't checked into that. I keep meaning to. I just haven't. I'm trying to get I'm wrapping up two classes that I taught at the university this fall, and I've got to get that done before I can think about doing anything else right
Well, I hope to see you there as well as on Facebook and as well as on the shows. Thank you. If we don't talk, very happy holiday and happy new year to you and to all your loved ones. Give my
now.
regards to Greg, and I will talk to you very, very soon.
Okay, Hercules, and happy holidays to you, Athena, and your families.
Thank you. And this will be up on Friday, tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Yeah, be well, my friend, and be well, everybody listening.
Okay, take care.
You too.